Alrighty, happy Sunday, folks. Time for the weekly update. I'm going to go a little out of order from the description I put here. I'm going to put something I've gotten a lot of questions about first, and that's, of course, the hospital. Um, Folks may have seen that the CEO gave his notice. He's going to be staying around, from what I read, for transition period. Sorry. Uh, but I've talked with the chair of the board over there, and I can't give a lot of details. I can just say that they have a plan. I've known their chair for a long time. I've known several of their board members for many years, and I know they have a plan. It is a big shift, especially when so much has been up in the air for the hospital. But it sounds like they're getting a lot of input from staff. A lot of ideas are out there, and sometimes these big changes that happen in one big wave are necessary. So I know they have a plan. They've got identified, I believe, an interim, or at least they have somebody ready to go. So it's not flying blind, just a real big shift. And then as I've been asked what I think I'll see as far as how they can stabilize. There are three things I would be looking at stepping into it. One, you'd want to look for administrative streamlines. So during this last budget cycle for the county, you saw us lump juvenile. We moved them under community corrections. So that's an example of streamlining your admin. It let us move some of the, it let us downsize the leadership aspect of it, which unfortunately removes. I believe we only removed one position in the end, but it does save money and allow an entity to continue to exist. They'll be looking at what services they deliver, where do they have net positives, what is net negative. You've seen them do that a little already. I think it might have been the MOMS program. It was one of the newer mother programs shortly after baby is born, supports that the hospital discontinued, I think a couple months ago now, and public health, COOS Health and Wellness under the county picked up that program to administer it. Now, because we have different funding streams than they do, so sometimes it's not that a program needs to go away altogether, it's just finding who is the right person to run that program, and then having the humility to say sometimes that's not me, which is what they did. And we were happy to be able to assist and pick up that program and keep it going for people, because Coos County Oregon as a whole has a lot of challenges with its youth. So as I've stressed before, any point at which we can intercept and provide good opportunities for youth, take their life into a positive direction early on, is beneficial. And then I'd expect them to be looking at their contracts. Are they being overcharged for anything? Is there anything that they're providing as a service through a contract that they could be billing more on? Are they missing any administrative rates? Are there increases that have been deferred 2 or 3 years? A lot of times you get a program that's been around a long time. Maybe the contract rates just haven't been updated for a while. It sits in the back and it continues to happen. I've known, not Coos Bay, but I knew of another city that had, when I was working in support employment for people with disabilities, we had a janitorial program. There was a city that it did just let its contract lapse and kept paying, and we were providing the service, telling them, hey, we need a contract, but didn't happen. Sometimes that happens. They'll want to see if any of that's been going on. Economic development thing, though, one of my exciting ones this last week, and I'll explain why a little bit, but City of Powers. I've mentioned before, I've been meeting with different staff at the different cities, getting a sense of what their economic objectives are. Powers had a lot of ideas, a lot of things it wants to do in terms of tourism, in terms of some industry aspects. They've got a lot of ranches out there right now. Stuff gets slaughtered, goes all the way to Bandon. be a lot easier if there was somewhere to have animals slaughtered in the Powers area, because that's quite a drive. They don't have a hotel right now. The last one burnt down. They'd like to get a hotel again. And I shared some of this with the South Coast Development Council. It's a economic development council in our area that works mostly with traded sector jobs, larger businesses, but they also collaborate very closely with the Small Business Development Center, with CCD, does business loans and such. So they've got a broad spectrum, and they cross-pollinate. Went out with them to Powers, and Powers as mayor is interested in their city joining the South Coast Development Council, that's a big deal. Powers is almost like a little forgotten city within the county, I felt. And one of the things coming into office I wanted to make sure is that nobody is feeling forgotten. My family lived in Lakeside a long time, kind of used to being in a place that feels a little forgotten by the county at times. So that was one of the big outreaches, and to see Powers want to join this whole regional organization dedicated to economic development is pretty exciting. So that'll come up at one of their council meetings, and I know some folks from South Coast Development Council will be there. I'm going to try and be there if I can. But yeah, and one of the reasons I talk quite a bit, I think, about Powers and about Lakeside, and one of the reasons I do that is I see them as the bookends of the county. If you create a reason for people to go to Powers, and they came from the north, they're going to go through Lakeside, Coos Bay, North Bend, probably take the Coquille route and Myrtle Point. They could go to Bandon and then cut over to Coquille, but almost all the cities in the county, if you get somebody from the north coming to Powers, they are all going to get a tourist that comes through. And then for Lakeside, if they draw tourists, or North End, if they're coming from the south, they're either going to come up the coastline, they'll go through Bandon, Coos Bay, North Bend, and then they'll hit Lakeside. Or if they came from the southeast, they hit Myrtle Point and Coquille, and then Coos Bay, North Bend, and Lakeside. So when we look at how those two cities can generate traffic, we create traffic throughout the entire county and increase the potential for economic investment, people stopping at restaurants, all the good things. And, as I said a minute ago, they feel a little neglected. So if they've got an opportunity to grow, they're ripe for development because they're just waiting for it to happen. And their mayors have been very excited and participative. So that's been cool. We got that. Oh, and coming up, not this week because it's Fair Week, but in the soon to come, SCDC and I'll have a meeting with the city of Myrtle Point. So another area, another opportunity for economic development. Let's see. Frustrating one. Highway 101 is going to have a closure south of Bandon the weekend of the Prefontaine Run, Fun Festival, and Cruise the Coos, which I got a message from the Visitors Convention Bureau letting me know about that, so I went down that rabbit hole this week. And now I've got a bit of a disagreement with ODOT because I was told that different groups were reached out to, that a bunch of hotels were reached out to, and now I've talked to several hotels and groups, and I'm hearing no, they weren't. We did have notification through our roads department, but that pertains to us thinking about when we're doing roads. The tourism side, they didn't talk to the Visitors Convention Bureau, which is insane if you're trying to figure out what dates will work, what's going to be interfered with. Several hotels, it sounds like they didn't, some of the bigger ones. So that's something I'm still pushing back on to see if they can reschedule their road work, because it will completely shut down the road south of Bandon. The detour will be to go to I-5 and then come back in. So that's just not an acceptable outcome. Did some stuff looking at efficiencies this week. It's a company that helps cities replace their streetlights with LEDs, save money. I looked into that with the county and what we've got as far as streetlights. Not necessary to do at the moment, wouldn't be a substantial benefit. So we're holding off on that, but something I might talk to some of the cities about too, because we're all struggling for funding. And if it could benefit one of the cities, in the end, that benefits the county if we have healthier cities. So I'll see if any of the other cities might benefit from working with that. That was, I want to say the company was Amoresco, but I might be mistaken. Had a funny one. Always nice to know that we have great staff and great elected officials. And in one case, we have a staff member who is also an elected official. Megan Sims is our treasurer and our finance director. And this week, a firm reached out to me they wanted to solicit business. I guess the county used them some years back, and they do investments with public money. I don't know all the ins and outs and the legalities of how that works, but it is a thing that's done. We do it already. Megan handles that for us. And these folks reached out asking, they're trying to sell something. Maybe they go with a big number. They said, could you use an extra $3 million over the course of the next year? Because they looked at our financials and figured that's what they could make with it. So I asked Megan who these folks are, if it's legitimate, that sort of thing. And Megan, through the investments, has generated $3.4 million for the county that helps subsidize our funds in the same way these folks offered to. So it's nice to know the company reaching out trying to sell me something can't outperform the people we already have. That always entertains me. Going to be talking with some cities. Something was brought up to me about collaborative work. I like collaborative work. Economy of scale is important. We'll be talking with some other cities and groups about consolidated planning, so that we talk with the other cities, we talk with the county, see if there's a way to make a planning code that works so that if you build something in Coos Bay, you know how to build something in Coos County, you know how to build something in Coquille, Myrtle Point, North Bend. Just try and get things similar. I haven't talked to the other cities about it, so they'll know I said it. Some of them will find out when they watch this. But yeah, I'm going to talk to a group, see if we can do that. And yes, Anna, Megan is amazing. Mental health contract that I've talked about before, no changes right now. Yeah, that's pretty much that. No changes right now. I know the Association of Counties and some of the, it would be committees with the AOC are negotiating with the state, but I haven't heard anything more quite yet. So when I know more, I'll let you know. And been let's see, studies. That's the last thing I've got on here, because I mentioned last week some of what we do is a lot of reading. I've been reading through the Oregon Constitution, slogging my way through to get some baselines on why things are the way they are. I found the section that would need modified to allow for the 5% of income tax to come back to counties, but I mentioned before, I'm just saying 5% at this point. The number is going to be different from that. It's going to be bigger, I would imagine, because a lot of factors are coming into play. Because those factors are coming into play, I am going to need data, and the data I've requested from the Treasury probably over a month ago, it hasn't come back, and nobody's called me back. So the state Treasury, I should clarify, not us. Our people do good work, but yeah. But as an example of one thing I was looking at, I might have talked about it before, is what the state does with its money that goes into state police versus what it's equivalent to if the county had it. I wasn't able to get information on how they're allocating resources, but for they call it the Coos Bay office. I'm assuming it's Coos County, all of it, because I know it's not the city of Coos Bay that they're covering. They've allocated 14 officers, a sergeant and a lieutenant, might be 2 sergeants, but for the same amount of money, we could do quite a bit more than that. One of the arguments that's been brought to me is how much, well, the assertion's been made to me that Portland, we should maybe feel lucky we get what we get because Portland is the big economic driver. Well, policies out of that region over time have been one of the reasons we don't have as much economy as we used to. And in my opinion, overinvestment up there is a bit of a detriment to the state. So actually it would have been 2023, ODOT made the announcement it didn't have enough money to keep some of the roads into eastern Oregon going. So the governor got 19 million put into that. 3 months later, there was a decision that graffiti needed to be cleaned up around Portland. So that got $20 million. So when we're looking at priorities, the ability to access eastern Oregon received less funding than cleaning up graffiti in Portland. So when things like that are happening, I feel like we may need to study how resources are being allocated, what they're allocated to, and maybe we need to cut out some of this kind of discretionary aspect the state has, get it back to what it is legally supposed to be doing, regard if it's good at it at all. If not, figure out a plan, invest in what it has to do, and then start getting to the things it wants to do. And in the meantime, make sure local communities, their citizens, are receiving services commensurate to the wages that they are generating. Because right now, none of your state income taxes come back unless the state decides to give it back to a county or a program, and only in the way that the state prescribes. So we'll look at things. We'll look at, as an example, I mentioned we can do more with the money. As far as officers go, we could recruit more than I believe the state can based on their pay, but Portland pays more for its officers than the state does. We pay not as good for our officers as the state does. So we could do more with that money, but Portland benefits from the staters by, doesn't cost as much. It's a discount for them when state patrol is in. So things like that to look at. Yep, I had a bit of a ramble on this one. That was long. All right, I'll cut it off there. Yeah, everybody have a good one, and we'll see you.